Welcome to week 24 of the All In podcast with Bad Beat, Bryce, and Ryan the Rock. How you doing, Ryan?
Dude, I am doing very well.
Glad to hear it.
The screen, so I don't echo.
Oh, I'm sorry. It is gone. We are back.
All good. I'm doing really well, Bryce. I'm doing really well.
That's good to hear. Anything happening?
No, not much. I mean, I just, destroyed some pasta with oil and garlic, feeling pretty good, getting ready for the session tonight. So, stuff to look forward to. What about you?
It's awesome, man. Yeah, pretty good. We had that heads-up tournament last night. Did fairly well in that, so that was good.
Oh, you did all right.
I'm just exhausted, though, man. I've been tired. I need to sleep some more.
Is it the finals are tonight, correct?
No, the finals was last night, man.
Oh, brutal.
Yeah, I lost.
Yeah. Oh,
it's okay. It happens. It was a good time. But yeah, I mean, things have been pretty good. Need to put in some more volume. I haven't been playing as much, but my last month at work has been my busy season, so I'm so glad to have that over, so I can put in a ton more hours.
For a lot of people like us who are playing semi, on the side, we're coming into the quota buster part of the year for pretty much everyone. So if you're in a sales business or a finance business, the last quarter is always get it done time. So yeah, you definitely have to cut back a little bit, but it is what it is.
Exactly. So before we get into our desk, I think it's very interesting if you guys follow the poker world. Mike Postle decided to strike back and files a $330 million lawsuit for sustained damages due to the cheating allegations. Yeah, pretty sizable.
Bryce, we didn't get a cease and desist letter. I'm a little upset he didn't come after us.
Yeah, right?
No?
I mean, we've implied, we haven't provided as much evidence. We've more just stated our opinion. And
exactly.
Our defamation on our millions of fans, I guess it just doesn't care about.
Exactly.
But, yeah, so how do you feel about this, that he's suing a bunch of the vloggers and basically anyone who alleged against him that he's a cheater?
It's so funny because, Jason Karitis, who's been, the most vocal defender of him, went quiet a week before this came out, where his Twitter, where he's just been talking trash and responding to people and being pretty rude about it, he just all of a sudden went quiet, and then this comes out and it's because it's a bad look for everyone involved. What does he stand to gain from this? Nothing. I can't see him winning any of these lawsuits.
Absolutely not.
Or you were able to prove legally that you didn't cheat, but technically in the game, you absolutely 100% cheated, and everyone who plays poker knows it.
Just what do you think is going on in his head? What is his motivation? Yeah. Does he actually think that he can convince people he didn't cheat? Because anyone who has seen any evidence, seen his graph, anything of that nature, just knows he's a cheater. When you show he's just barreling with pocket threes on a double paired board, moving all in, you just don't see that.
5-4 offsuit against two people with ace king, not losing the max when his opponent turns a straight flush and he has the nut flush. The hands go on and on and on and on and on and on, and it's just sad. I mean, the guy is not allowed. I mean, I'm sure he's blacklisted from every poker room in the country, and he deservedly so. And we just got to move on. None of this is going to work. It's going to drag along. And
that's actually a good question. I bet he's not.
Really? You don't think he is?
You think they have a picture? Because think about it. For blackjack card counters and stuff, they're banned per casino. The Strip might share information on card counters, but if you then go to Florida and start card counting, they're not going to know who you are.
Well, that's an interesting question. I don't think after how much, and this is a good point for his defamation suit, how much his face has been out there and how much, if anyone has touched any of that poker content who runs a poker room in the country and sees his face, how do you react? I would deny his action.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair, but he cheated with an RFID. You know what I mean? He had people helping him.
Sitting down at a table.
If you put me heads up against Paso, let's play. You can prove to me he's not cheating, I'll kick his ass.
Just to prove, yeah.
But
power of possible thinking. You never know what's coming.
Exactly, but I'm sure you guys are pretty sick of that. But in case you had not heard of that poker news, we wanted to bring it to light a little bit. But without further ado, I'll allow Ryan to do his iconic intros.
Oh, yes. Thank you. So this week's guest on the All In podcast is the pure definition of a poker grinder. With just shy of $4 million in online winnings over more than a decade of consistent, successful play, Brian Fite is a perfect example of a poker grinder. You can find him on Twitch, where he streams sessions with 30-plus tables at a time for his poker coaching company, Team Turbo Kings. With the mantra, heads down, graph up, Brian has grown the site to help over 1,000 students from around the world improve their game. Without further ado, let's welcome Brian Fite to the All In podcast.
Hey, what's up, guys? Thanks for having me.
Welcome, Absolutely. Man. How you doing?
Did I look for that last name, by the way? I'm sorry I didn't ask.
It's Fite.
It is Fite. Brian.
Yeah, I get Fite all the time, though. It's all good.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. I was like, oh, man, right as it came up. Oh,
no worries.
That's all good, man. Well, thank you so much for being on. We really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. Well, so just to kick things off, I live poker has effectively been on hold with some exceptions for the majority of this year.
Sure.
Now, you have a unique perspective of this because you mostly play online. So do you see the world post-pandemic returning mainly to the live streets? Or do you think that online content creators and poker bloggers have pushed us so much more towards online that that's going to be the way things go?
Mostly the latter, but I don't think it's I think it's somewhere in between mostly. I don't think that the live scene is going to be thriving again like it was for quite some time. A lot of the pros are going to revert to online and make their specialty online. A lot of the fun players are not going to go have fun at the casino, but go have fun somewhere else. So I just think it's going to be a while before the live scene's thriving again, and online's going to do well for a while at the low and mid stakes. The high stakes are already, tapering off the guarantees, and the traffic and the series are kind of over, and the sites are kind of shutting down the big game. So it just really depends on the stakes and I guess location for the casino. But for online, the games are really good for low and mid stakes, and that's not going to change. Casino, right. It really just depends. Yeah,
absolutely.
I think one of the restrictions is obviously that, online poker is illegal in most of the United States. If it magically became legal overnight, some executive order, it becomes legal overnight. Do you think the casino industry would survive if it became legal all 50 states and we could all sit on
I'm probably not the person to ask, but my opinion would be yes, survive, but just the thriving level would be way lower.
Right.
Right. Because there's not like a lot of guys like me specifically, or like younger males who are worried about the legality aspect of online poker in the USA, but it's the older for the most part. I'm generalizing a lot here, so don't
all good. It's a very general question.
But mostly I would say 40 plus is worried about the legality part, and that keeps a lot of the the recreational types out of the game, which is terrible for us.
Yeah, I don't know. I personally don't think that people care all too much about the legality. I think it's more just being worried about your fund security. So depositing in a third party app, or especially these agent apps. Obviously, we play on them through trusted agents, sure. But these guys are just afraid they won't get their money. Because in terms of legality, no one has ever gotten in trouble for playing online poker. People who run it have, obviously sports betting gets more in trouble than the poker world has, but I think they're more just concerned with depositing money, running it up, spending their time, energy, and money, and then just not seeing any of it. And also the collusion aspect. I think totally online poker would increase if it became legal. And like Brian said, I think that it would go... it wouldn't thrive in the live setting. But I think a lot of poker players who play online, obviously, it's for the love of the game, and there's a lot of rec players who are just there to have a beer for the social aspect. So those players, I don't think, are necessarily going to turn online for that reason. But
right,
kind of went on a tangent a little bit.
No, that's really interesting. I agree.
But on the topic of online poker, our next question is, we've discussed the differences between online and live poker on this podcast before, but I'm curious on your take. What do you think is the best piece of advice for live players who are trying out the online poker scene, specifically during the pandemic? I know people who never played online who are now turning to the online streets just because their friends are telling them it's so soft.
Best piece of advice is tough. The first thing that comes to mind, though, is the difference of in-game play. So at the casino, you have eyes on you, lots of sets of eyes on you. Your pulse and your body movements are all kind of going on in your own head. When you're online, it's kind of just like flashcards. You're just being hit with a bunch of decisions, depending on how many tables you're playing, of course. But let's say you're playing 4 tables at a time, or 6 or 10. It doesn't really matter. Just fill in the blank. It's more of like just you and you only. There's nobody else involved. Whereas at the casino is a very social event, and you're very much, in my opinion, a lot of players are in their own heads because there's eyes on them. So online, all that's removed. And a lot of people don't really take the time to really understand what the difference is. And I think humans and our behavioral patterns and our tendencies are just totally different. We're in the privacy of our own home. Behind a screen name, it's not our real name. We're not revealing our identity. We're not being seen. We're not being exposed. It's a different thing. So I think players are comfortable playing loosey-goosey, terrible. I'm bored. I'm on Netflix. I'm on Facebook. I'm sending DMs. I'm, making a sandwich. I'm sitting out for a couple hands to go smoke a cigarette. All these things that they wouldn't do at the casino, right? So that's part of it. Is you got to take it just as serious. Like every hand matters, but it's really, to me, it's more about just like you're playing so many more hands. Your leaks come to the surface so fast. If you're bad at 10 BB play, you get to figure it out way faster than you do at the casino, because you might not get down to 10 BB in a tournament at a casino for like 3 events in a row. You might just be a big stack and then bust every time with 30 BB instead of having 10 ever. Whereas online, you're going to play a handful of tournaments and be down to 10 BB a handful of times for sure. Same thing with like bubble play. If you're playing bubbles too loose or too tight, if you're not good heads up and sit and goes, and you're playing 9-man sit and goes, and you get heads up a few times a session, that's a big thing where it doesn't come to the surface in live play because you play big field tournaments and you never get heads up, Or if you sit down online and you think, I'm going to play some Hold'em today, and you play a bunch of 9-man $100 turbo sit and goes, you get heads up 3 times and you play terrible 3 times, you might as well just not play 9-man sit and goes.
Right.
So there's all these differences that are easily like going to crush you in online that don't really happen live because the amount of times they happen is so much different. So like, again, blind versus blind play, all these things that just happen nonstop, whereas it's happening a few times per hour max live. So you don't really realize how bad you are at certain spots, and you don't get punished as bad for it. Sample sizes are way smaller. So I think a lot of people will get really crushed when they come online if they haven't played much.
I love that description that online hands is like looking at flashcards. I totally, that just clicked with me. Like, cause I totally feel that, you're sitting in a spot and you're just like, all right, I have 8-9 suited in the cutoff and I'm facing a middle position open. Like, what do I do here? It's like flashcards. It's quick.
It should be. Ideally, there's an answer there. Yeah. And it might be a couple of different varying answers depending on who opens, depending on who's behind. But yeah, it's a flashcard.
And I totally think that it can help live players. Absolutely. Just because, like, for me, like, if anyone who's ever gone to school and learned anything in their lives, repetition is super important. And in live poker, like you're saying, repetition comes much slower. So someone who's playing online is going to see way more than quintuple the hands, depending on how many tables they're running.
The thing, right? Saying much slower doesn't even do it justice. It's like, it's hard to put into words how much slower it is, especially if we're talking about, 8 to 10 tables online compared to live. Playing 2 tables online is like kind of similar to live, but still way faster.
Yes.
10 tables at a time, we're talking about hundreds of times more hands,
Right.
Yeah, it's just so comical to Ryan and I, the players who come online and just get crushed and are like, oh, it's so rigged. Sure. And they're playing like 3 tables in this club, playing absolutely atrociously. They're like, oh my god, flush over flush, that's so sick. I'm like, what? Like, first of all, not even like royal flush enough, like literally flush over flush. They're like, oh, this never happens live. Like, it's just like you're playing so many more hands. Like,
and then on the flip side, you got guys like me where I play like almost exclusively online. I get to the live scene, I'm like fumbling my chips around. I'm giving out live tells left and right. I'm effectively terrible at it. I'm not supposed to be great at it. I don't do that. So it's like, you gotta see what you're doing as for what it is. And I understand that all eyes on me, one hand at a time. Like, I'm just not the best, and I know that.
That's super funny. So I wanted to take you back a little bit. So you've been a professional for over a decade, and one of the key things that I found on your Hendon Mob was a deep run in the 2010 main event in the WSOP.
Yeah.
So nice little $30,000 score. This was, a couple years into playing poker.
Yep.
Did that deep run in one of the biggest tournaments in the world change your outlook on your poker career, or was it just, another tournament for you?
At that stage, I'm lucky enough to say it was not just another tournament, but closer to that than it was a pivotal moment in my career. I was battling for the yearly tournament leaderboard top spot in the middle of that year. So the WSOP is in the summer, of course. So I was playing full-time in 2009. And then like October of 2008 is when I started. So 2009 was my first full year. And then 2010, I wanted to compete for the tournament yearly leaderboard on Stars, the yearly TLB. I was doing the weekly, the monthly. Like you got your picture on the bottom of the lobby. I don't know if you might be too young. I don't know.
We're too young.
Yeah, this is way back when you got paid like absurd amounts of money to win the weekly TLB and the monthly TLB, and they would put your picture on the bottom of the lobby. Like millions of people would see it. It was amazing.
That's cool.
So I was grinding that real hard, and I was leading the entire year. I was in first place for the entire year, and then I won a satellite for the main event on Stars, and I won a satellite for the main event on Full Tilt within 30 minutes of each other on the last day to qualify for the main. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh man, I just won 15K cash on each site, and I get to cash them in and not have to go to Vegas, right? And I didn't even want to go to Vegas and play because I wanted to continue competing for the leaderboard. I'm playing like $4 50Ks on Stars to get all the points because it's all about player field size. So me and a bunch of other sickos were just grinding all the tables, all the 180 mans, all the MTTs, like all the stakes. And me going to Vegas was effectively just like handicapping my run at the points. So I didn't really want to go, but Full Tilt told me I was Stars said I was gonna have to forfeit my package if I didn't go play. So I went and played and then cashed the event. So it was just like an upswing on top of an upswing that I didn't really intend to even happen.
What a cool, fortunate thing. You know, you didn't want to go, but you're like, oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, what a crazy spot to be in. Like, oh, okay. I guess I'll go to the main event.
Yeah, if you're going to pull the sleeve.
Like, twist my arm.
Yeah, it was a trip. And yeah, it was like an amazing experience. I even landed on the feature table. I was on the feature table race folding Jack Duke's offsuit from under the gun on the bubble.
Really? That's cool.
That's my one moment. I have like all these sick hands where I'm like pulling off bluffs, doubling up, like getting value bets in. And then the one hand they show of me is me raise folding Jack Deuce offsuit from under the gun, hand for hand play.
That's the worst part is people don't realize that the things that you see on the feature table, you don't see every hand. So you're going to miss like they're trying to paint a narrative sometimes. Right. Sometimes showing interesting spots. Like that sucks that you didn't get your bluff.
So picture this, right? It's like after WSOP, we already know who won, and ESPN starts airing a new episode every week. So it's back in 2010. Me and all my buddies are so excited because we know that I'm probably on TV, right? But we don't know what the footage looks like. We just know that I was there for a while playing. And they record it and edit it and then create an episode for ESPN. So we're all just like so excited. Everyone's meeting at my house. It's like a party, you know? It's like a viewing party. And like my moment finally comes, and it lasts like a solid 12 seconds. I raise the Jack Deuce off, fumble my chips, fumble my cards, look like a complete buffoon. And that was that. I was like, well, thanks. That was a great showing for the kid. Yeah.
That's so unbelievable. Yeah. ESPN did you dirty. That's unbelievable.
Let's see. I can find the clip. I don't know if you can. You probably can't show it, huh? Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, you should definitely send it to us, though.
Yeah. We very excited to see
man on my Twitch channel. People love to look at it and troll me about it.
That's amazing.
Oh, that's good.
I'll show you later.
Sounds good. So we brought up your Twitch stream already, but what's it like being a Twitch streamer? Looking at your 3-monitor setup is pretty intimidating. How do you balance managing 30 tables at a time while keeping your Twitch chat happy for many hours a day?
I get a lot of questions about like, what do I think about this? What do I think about that? Largely because I've been doing this for so long. And my answer almost always revolves around experience. So I played 6 tables for more hours than most people play poker, period. Then I played 8 tables for that many hours. Then I played 10 tables for that many hours. We're talking like many years ago, right? And I started playing when Moneymaker got into poker, the poker boom in 2003, which when I was 14. So I was multi-tabling sit and goes before I was 16. And then when I turned 16, I had made enough money multi-tabling sit and goes to pay for a bunch of upgrades for my truck. So I've been multi-tabling sit and goes now that I'm 32 for more than half my life. You know, like that's you can't really say anything else that you've been doing half your life for most people, right? So it's like that's the main reason why. It's not because I'm special or it's because I have some skill or it's because I'm good at gaming or because I have great hand-eye coordination. It's none of those things. It's that I've just put in the 10,000 hour rule over and over and over and over. You know what I'm talking about? The 10,000 hour rule?
Yeah. Outliers, of course.
Right. So for those to be considered world class at something, you effectively need to put 10,000 hours in, is what a lot of people say. And I've done that, and I'm running circles around that. I'm on hour like 100,000. I don't know. Yeah. So that's how I do it. Is like it's flashcards, man. Like literally, I don't have to think very many times throughout the day. I'm looking at my big screen. Like if I had 20 tables up, I don't play 30 that often, by the way. I used to, but not anymore. I play like 12 to 18 now. But also my average buy-in is multiples now of what it used to be. So it doesn't have the same table count, you know? But I don't really have to think that often unless we're playing super deep stacked. And that's what we talked about before the podcast, was that I'm a turbo guy. Like, I love the short stack, love the ICM, love the final table play. But I don't want to go play a deep stack cash game with all these good players. I'll probably get smoked, That's not my thing. So it's really just, I put myself in position to play games where it is very similar to flashcards, because I've already figured out how to play that spot through studying, reviewing, discussions, paying coaches, but largely just studying, taking a hand history that I play, putting it in a replayer, and running spots that I'm not sure, screenshotting, asking people if I'm not sure, putting in an ICM calculator, and just doing that like a student in school for many, many years, every single year for the last 12, 13 years. So it's like, it's really not that impressive. Like, if I wasn't doing well at it after all that time and all those hours and all those years, like, what am I doing,
Right.
Pretty humble view. It is impressive. I mean, obviously it makes sense more so than someone who just comes off the street and just crushes poker or something. But I also like that you mentioned how you have had coaching. I mean, I've had coaching. I think there's absolutely no shame to have coaching, and I think
I'm proud of it.
Some people, you need to invest in it. And I know you have a website that you started up with your buddy, so you guys should definitely go check out that coaching website. Your results, I mean, daily I see his stories of how he's just crushing these tournaments, and it's awesome. We appreciate your transparency, and if you guys are looking to get better, hire a coach. It's 100% worth the investment, tenfold.
I mean, I walk it like I talk in that regard. I spend more on coaching than any of my students do. Promise you that. I got one-on-one coaching. I spend a bunch of money on videos. I get people to watch me play. Like, no one's spending more on coaching than I am. Promise you.
Right.
Absolutely. Incredibly important.
And so, your company's catchphrase is heads down, graph up.
Head down, graph up. Yeah. So just like, no matter what, when things are going bad, keep your head down, and eventually your graph will go up. And this actually started when I was in a downswing, and I was trying to have my viewers share my mentality, which was, this doesn't matter, you guys. So they were kind of like, not calling me out for being arrogant, but like, why don't you care? Why are you acting so much like you don't care when this is going so poorly? I was like, because caring is like, it's for the birds. It's not really a thing. I'm caring about the next 1,000 games, and I know it's going to go up. Like, my head's down, guys, and my graph's going to go up. And like, it just kind of happened like that on Twitch, and then it became a thing, and I started saying it a lot, and then I like started typing it some, and I started posting it, and I started hashtagging it, and I put it on my website, and like, now I want to put it on some shirts and some hats, and it's just like kind of becoming a little bit of a thing. But yeah, it's like head down, graph up, baby. It's a mentality. It's a lifestyle. Like, it could be a kid in college who's trying to study for his finals. It could be somebody battling a disease. It could be like anybody who needs to remember that if you stay the course, do what you're supposed to do, take care of business, like, eventually this is going to turn into what you want it to, which is the graph going up, or passing your test, or beating the disease, or whatever it might be.
Right. 100%. And I love the logo too. The H with the arrow down.
It's sick.
Isn't that cool? Yeah. Thanks.
Oh, it's so cool. I thought that was really
Thanks
cool.
for showing some love to head down, graph up. Thanks.
Of course. But I think, it does. It encapsulates the grind of poker a lot. And I find myself, I use a poker app to track all of my stuff. So I have a graph that tracks all of my sessions. And I find myself going through just that thing, getting too emotionally attached to an upswing or a downswing.
Yep.
So, how do you use your poker graphs, even when you're on a downswing, to push yourself to work harder?
Well, because it's so motivating. I mean, looking back at my graph, or anybody's lifetime graph who's in a similar situation as me, where it effectively funds a lot of what I did and what I'm going to do, how can I look back and be happy with what I've done if I'm not going to be happy about what I'm going to do? Because the graph that I built got me to where I am, and it was full of downswings. It was full of tough times. It was full of annoying, like, want to slam my mouse down, but don't, like, make a scene, but don't, like, be a jackass, but don't, keep your cool and just keep grinding, get to the finish line, put in the volume, get the paycheck effectively. And that's what it's all about for me, is like, punch in and punch out, get your volume in, like, don't stop early, don't start late, don't finish early, like, just do the job. It's going to be full of things that you can't predict. It's going to be full of like amazingness, shitty spots, variance. That's what variance is. I'm describing variance, right? So when I look back at my graph, it fires me up, because the next graph I build it's not going to be worse. It might be way better. And if it's the same, that's awesome. I would love that. That would be a solid next 10 years or whatever. But to me, it's like, I tell my friends and my students all the time, like, dude, it doesn't matter how much you make in 2020 or what you made in 2019 or what you make in 2021. You can make $500K in 2024. Like,
100%.
like head down, graph up like that too. You know, it's all about inchworming the hell out of this game because it's going to be here a long time. You know, we can make a lot of money in the future. So it's not really as instant gratification as most people wanted. Of course, nothing is, but poker is very much rewarding to those who stick with it. Definitely.
Yeah, and it's totally gratifying to just see that emotional transformation. I've seen it in Ryan. I've seen it in myself. In the beginning, when I first started playing poker, you lose, you get sucked out, you get 3 out or whatever it is, and you're just angry. And I would be lying to you if I told you I haven't thrown my phone in the last few months from a poker
legit angry.
suck
Like,
out.
Like,
like don't want to talk to your girlfriend, don't want to walk your dog, like angry.
Yeah.
I've been there.
But
I've been there for sure.
It feels good to know that I am in such a better place than I was. Like Ryan, even last week, got sucked out on. He's like, you know what? I'm zero upset and I'm really happy about it. And I'm like, that's awesome, man. And he went back, crawled out of the hole, and had a great session.
And let me add, a big part of that is game selection and bankroll management. You know, you get way more tilted when you lose a big spot. You know, if it's a normal spot that you're playing under your, like within your means or under your means,
I think
feels a lot better. It's easier to swallow. Most people struggle with that. You know, playing $50 tournaments with a 2K roll, it's tough. You know, so playing $5 tournaments, you probably won't be as tilted. You know, I don't want to play $5 tournaments. Well, you don't want to do it right then, you know?
Right.
That's what it is.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's
and
a
that's
good point.
You know, this makes me think about this is a little different for you. Andrew Nemi brought up this really interesting discussion the other day about retirement from poker.
Okay.
And he was talking about how there are some people who retire and then leave the game entirely. And he was confused by that concept because he was like, you know, like we enjoy playing the game. Retirement isn't really a thing. Like you can still play poker a couple hours a week. You just don't have to do it as a profession. Do you ever see yourself fully retiring from poker?
Absolutely not. Even remove the I need to make money and I need to build like a nest egg. I need to retire someday. I need to like build a family and pay for it. Remove all that from the equation. I love the game. I want to play. I would love to have my friends over, flick on a UFC fight, order a pizza, flick some cards in the air and have some beers. Like that's the perfect night, you know? So whether it's on a very non-competitive, purely for enjoyment, with money that I can afford to lose type level, or whether it's like somewhere in between or me playing at a very high level, I don't see myself ever leaving the game fully. It doesn't make any sense to me.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's pretty confusing to me. I actually like how some high stakes pros have come out and talked about whether it be their anxiety or depression or something around playing. Like, I mean, if it's causing you like crippling anxiety, I can understand a step back in a retirement from poker. But these other guys, like, what if you say you're gonna play less, like Doyle Brunson or something? Sure, but like at least fire in the main event or something. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to fully go away. Just spend way less time on it. I can't see myself ever getting away. Yeah, exactly. So our next question is, you made the decision to move from Texas to Mexico in 2018 to pursue online poker full time. Well, you already made that decision, but I'm curious how you came to the decision to move there, and how has life been adjusting to a new culture around you?
So I got to correct you a little bit. In 2000, let's see, I born and raised in Texas. I was in Vegas during Black Friday, and then came back to Texas, regrouped, rebuilt a bankroll on the USA sites, and then moved to Canada with one of my students, Linball's 1014. Lenny, shout out to my boy Lenny. And then we spent 2 years in Canada shoveling snow. And the reason I was up there like above Maine in New York is that I had a pit bull at the time, and still do actually. And there was bands.
We saw in the background.
Yeah, you can. And there was bans on pit bulls in all the provinces except for except for New Brunswick. So I just went to the one that was super safe. I didn't want any problems, and you know, I was young and naive and didn't know anything about Canada, so just wanted to take the safe route. So I went up to the coldest spot, effectively. Road trip there, stayed 2 years, and that's back when Mexico was like all over the news with the crazy stuff, and it wasn't safe to go down there. So I had a bunch of friends going down across the border, just through San Diego in California, through Tijuana, down the coast a little bit to Rosarito Beach. It's like a 30-minute drive once you get into Mexico, which is about 20 minutes from San Diego. So like really, really attainable for people to just drive down there. They're like, what are you doing up there shoveling snow? Get down here and hang out on the beach. And I was like, yeah. And you know, once the winter got there, I was like, oh my God, I got to get out of here. I'm driving down. Go. So that was October of 2013 that I finally regrouped from Canada, went down to Texas, got all my stuff, and like moved again a couple months later and went to Mexico, I think it was. And that was October 2013. And I stayed there all the way until November of 2019. So the question was, what was that like? Was that the question?
Yeah,
yes,
essentially.
Like, first of all, like, all good. There was like not any situations where my life was at risk. I was never worried. It wasn't anything like that. So I'm not like thinking about how do I want to answer this. It was like, where do I start? First thing that was amazing is the climate, the food, the weather, and just the easygoing lifestyle that you don't really feel here in the States. That was really appealing to me, but I was always there out of necessity. So I kind of always wanted to be back home if I could, and was always trying to like build business or create streams of income or like hustle up a way to do what I wanted to do from Texas instead of having to be on Stars and be on Party and be on GG and all these sites that I can't access from Texas. So it was always like a struggle of like, how am I going to get back home and make a living and retire from there? But at the same time, I love being in Mexico. I met my girlfriend there, who I've been with for almost 6 years now. She's here with me in Texas. I got my dog there. Not the same dog that I went to Canada with, a different one. And, made a bunch of money and had a bunch of interesting chapters, got a bunch of experience, got to travel solo a lot, got to live with a bunch of friends, got to live solo, got to live in a condo for the first time. Street tacos, Tijuana experience was like once in a lifetime kind of thing, I feel like, especially now that the pandemic's here. So yeah, like I'm really happy it happened. It's obviously for unfortunate reasons because of Black Friday and all that, but looking back, it was a blessing in disguise, and never expected Black Friday to change my life so dramatically and positively. So
I guess that's a really good outlook on it. Yeah, I love that.
It ended a lot of people's poker careers, and instead it started your poker career.
Yeah,
you met your wife. That's awesome. It sounds like
a lot of
very good experience.
And like, I think I was forced to mature a bit and to like toughen my skin a little bit. I mean, I had to get a loan. I was effectively like going from very comfortable and in a great spot pre-Black Friday to completely down and out. And what little money I did have was tied up online, but I just had a terrible downswing. I made a bunch of terrible decisions investing money. I staked a bunch of players I shouldn't have staked. Full Tilt had this crazy multi-entry series where I just blasted way too hard and lost like 100K. And it was just like, okay, well, I just lost like 80% of my net worth. Let's grind it back now. Like, I'm going to go to bed, wake up, we'll start tomorrow. And I woke up and it was Black Friday now. So it's like, It was a bad time for sure. I had to rebuild.
Poor timing,
man.
That should be inspirational to a lot of players who punt their little $3,000-$5,000 rolls. That you had a 120K roll and punted 100K of it. You grinded it back up and made millions.
Like I was saying earlier, it doesn't matter what you make last year, this year, next year. Like, you make so much money in poker in the future. And similarly to what you're saying, it doesn't matter if you've gone Bosto before and like you feel like it's the end of the world and you're embarrassed about it or something. Like, dude, you can run it up. You can get really good. You can run it up so fast, so big, so quick. And that's what poker's so cool. That's why it's so cool. Where else can you say that about?
That's so true.
Well said. Do you have any final questions, Ryan, before we get into the hand histories?
No, I'm totally good.
All right. So we just have a picture for you guys on this one, but let me pull it up real quick. I believe this is a submission from one of your players. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. It is. I think he's probably watching right now too. So he's like, "What? Why is my hand here?" See, I told you guys a little bit about this spot. I want to let you take the lead here and ask whatever you want to ask, or just let me explain why I included this.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm assuming this is a tournament spot.
This is the final table of it.
I figured because it has big blinds. All right. So we have about 15 bigs in the small, and we wake up with Ace 5 offsuit, and the
Facing
button min raises to 2 big blinds.
It would be a little bit better if we couldn't see the buttons Ace.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So what are we thinking here, Ryan, when we wake up with an ace with only about 15 bigs?
Yeah, I mean, so this goes right back to what he was talking about, where, we have to decide where we're at from our push-fold chart, to a certain degree. So what are we going to do? We should know what we're going to do when this spot comes up. When it folds to the button and the button opens and we're here with Ace 5, we should know what we're doing. But in a theory sense, the button can be opening with a very, very wide range. If we couldn't see their 2 cards and it folded to the button and they open, you have to say, theoretically, there's only 2 other people in the hand, and they're incentivized to steal blinds. So, yes, they're going to be opening with a very wide range. Is Ace 5, at this point, is there any wiggle room to 3-bet with Ace 5? No, because any 3-bet would pretty much be a shove. unless you were going to min raise. And if you min raise and get shoved on, then what are you going to do? So your decision here is a shove or a fold. So there are merits to both. You do have an ace key blocker to important hands, but another important thing is ICM. If we look around the table, there are 2 other short stacks that are close to us, and we would be shoving into the big stack, which means that they can call particularly wide. But even if they're calling particularly wide, it's not like we're going to be miles ahead with a hand like ace-5 offsuit. So I think it's a marginal spot that's a fold.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Pretty well said. I'm interested as to, I think some people would actually look to flat this hand, and I agree that's just suicide.
Yeah.
I mean, while you think that the villain could be opening incredibly wide, especially because they've got a big stack and they should be opening a pretty wide range, I think it's just punting to jam ace-5. Do you really want to get in for a coin flip when there's 2 other stacks? Like, you can just pick a way, way better spot. And I'm sure the point of this spot was just ICM. But Brian, I'd love to hear your thoughts onto why exactly. I'm assuming you also think this is a fold.
Yeah, sure. So I think a lot of players assume that because the button is the chip leader or has a bunch of chips, that he's opening tons of hands, that we can jam a lot of hands. And while that makes a good amount of logical sense, I think it just stops kind of short of that. So I want to highlight what I'm thinking about first. His opening range matters a ton. If he's never opening a hand like 6-9 offsuit, that is miles and miles different than a player who's always opening a hand like 6-9 offsuit. So the frequency, like opening a lot of hands because he has chips, is effectively minutia. It doesn't really mean it's just noise. It doesn't really mean anything. We need a number. We need a frequency in which he's opening. And we need combos, and we need to know exactly like how many times he's going to open out of a million. So if it's 70 or if it's 30, that's going to completely drastically 1,000,000% change my strategy in the small blind. So that's why HUDs are important. I don't even like to say this because I'm the guy that wants HUDs banned. So like that's why HUDs are important though. While we can use them, because it's important to know how many hands people are playing. So if this guy is opening like a bazooka amount of hands and he's just playing all of them and he's clearly just that guy, then ace-5 here makes some sense. But if it's anything less or like significantly less or reasonably less, then it's going to become thin pretty quickly. And what I mean by thin is a lot of different things. It can mean marginal, it can be break even, it can mean winning a little but not a lot, it can mean like winning a reasonable amount but not quite what we want to settle for in this exact spot, because villain 5 is a huge whale who's just doubling people up left and right. Villain 2 in the big blind is a really tight random player. Villain 3 is sitting out, and villain 4 is whatever. Like maybe we just are in a really good spot, and we don't really care if it's X amount profitable. We don't want X, we want Y. So that's another thing is people think, well, if this is profitable, this is profitable. It's like, I'm not disagreeing with that. The conversation is it optimal? And the difference between profitable and optimal can sometimes be massive. And this is a spot where I think is very applicable for that exact thing, is the difference between profitable and optimal being very large, because we can probably shove here and win dollars. And again, we're not trying to win chips here because this is ICM. So in the middle of a tournament and beginning of a tournament, this is a pretty clear get in my opinion, and there's not really much conversation to be had. It's more of a flash card. On a final table, however, because our win rate's largely going to be driven by his opening range, i.e. how many times we get a fold, then we need to be a lot more selective, because we're not just here to settle on plus EV. We're here to optimize our strategy, and that is full of edge passing a lot of times in soft tournaments. So again, I went to game selection briefly previously, but if we're game selecting well, when we get to a final table, we're not sitting around a bunch of guys where we don't think we have an edge or our edge is minimal. We're usually sitting there with like 15 bigs feeling like the Hulk, And that's how it should be if we're playing the right tournaments. So we don't really want to take a spot like this if we're feeling really, really good with 15 blinds here, because we have a big edge. We don't need to feel like, well, everyone around us is going to play 15 blind poker really well, so I can't really pick up any edge here. I got to take this spot, even if it's marginal. False. Everyone's going to play pretty poorly. There's tons of edges to be had. People are going to limp. People are going to give you walks. People aren't going to open enough. People aren't going to float enough. They're not going to check raise bluff. They're not going to do things that make it tough to win at poker. They're not going to fight for pots. So therefore, there's effectively a premium on every spot you take in CEV and in ICM. And in this spot, I would say, okay, let's put it in the ICM calculator, whether it's ICMizer or Hold'em Resources calculator, whatever.
Yep.
Let's see if it spits out that it's profitable. Yeah, cool. If it's profitable, we'll shove. If it's not, we'll fold, right? Right. That's what most people do. But me, I'm like, where do I want to put the line at? Do I want to take 0.07 or better? Do I want to take 0.12 or better? Do I want to take 0.18 or better? Like, where is my edge passing line? And it's just because it's profitable doesn't mean that I'm going to take it. And I think this is going to earn enough EV to be profitable, but not enough for me to want to take it because, again, we should have a bigger edge than that. And I would probably just fold here for that reason.
And that's an interesting thing. There are no absolutes. I mean, there are some, but there are very few absolutes in Hold'em. Like, there are the absolute nuts in certain things. But in this situation, I think that's a really interesting point to bring up. That, if we were to run this in an ICMizer, it would probably tell us that some percentage of the time shoving ace-5 offsuit from the small blind in this situation is profitable, but it would be a small percentage of the time. I would imagine it would spit it out as a combo that you can shove, but if it does, it would only say like 20% or less.
Yeah, and it's not a spot where you're like calling your friends over to come rail, like I'm all in with it.
Yeah.
It's
exactly.
You're like, fuck, please fold, please fold. That generally assumes like you're not printing,
Exactly.
Absolutely. And I think the one thing we didn't mention, obviously we mentioned this was a final table, but if this was 5 hours into day one of the main event, this is a shove. Like it is because, like you said, we're playing for money. We're not playing for chips.
Yep.
And
this absolutely positively wins chips like all day, every day. The question is to win dollars now because
exactly 100%. So let's pull up
the
other spots. Very much appreciate.
It's sort of the same as having pocket twos on the button. You can shove and win chips all day, and when you get to ICM, that's not the case anymore. You're going to win chips, but you're not going to win dollars doing that.
Well said. All right, let's pull up.
But like I said, if it's BB 400 of the Sunday Million or something, and I got 7,800 chips and pocket twos on the button, I'm just going to jam, and I'm not going to feel comfortable at all doing that in an ICM setting.
Exactly. Ooh, yes. And so here we go. We get a good example of a HUD. Do you mind just for any people in the audience in layman's terms just saying what the HUDs are?
So it's a heads-up display that is taking in every single hand history as it happens and filtering it and creating stats for the frequencies in which it picks up. So if somebody folds 100 hands in a row, one of those numbers is going to have a 0. If somebody plays 100 hands in a row, they're going to have 100 on that same number. So it's just tracking raise frequency, re-raise frequency, call frequency, bet frequency, limp frequency, passive or aggressive. All these things can be tracked by just the simple process of the hand history being analyzed by the program and then showing you a number to effectively support that data.
Is his 3-betting percentage 0?
Yeah.
Where at? Which one is
it? The luck hump. Pre-flop 6.
He only has 53 hands.
53 hands,
yeah.
The red circle, red thing has the sample size for the opponent.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
I think it's silly to not use one if you have the opportunity to do so. But with that being said, I would like to see HUDs banned in the future. Yeah.
Makes sense. So what was the action on this hand?
So the luck hump opened and button with 10s 3-bet, looking to get it in with his 15 BB stack.
Yeah.
And then small blind ripped it, and the original opener came along. So action's back to the 10s to cap.
So what was the sizing of the 3-bet?
6.5 BB.
Okay. So that was the 6.5.
Right.
Okay, understood. And then he's all in for 15. While we have 10s, I actually 100% agree. This is just a fold. Assuming we're playing against competent players, we don't even have to think about that. We can just look at the HUD in this specific scenario. So he's only playing 13% of hands. He's pre-flop raising 6% of them, and he has yet to 3-bet. Obviously, the sample size is not massive whatsoever, but obviously he's on the tight side. Really tight side, only 13%. So when we 3-bet, he could be opening, obviously, it's still a condensed range. It's only 30%. It's very condensed. Yeah. So when we repop him and there's an all-in, I mean, obviously he's just so strong here when he's putting all. I mean, there's no sense in flatting, obviously, for 6 bigs. So he's really willing to risk his whole stack. But what is he doing?
Important probably is the fact that Ivy plus Unger is he's running like way crazier numbers over. Like those are absurd numbers, effectively.
Oh yeah, wow! I hadn't even.
But with that being said, like, do we think he's jamming 8s and 7s? Like, probably not. Do we think he's jamming like ace 10? It's very unlikely, in my opinion. So even the crazies are probably not going to show up with a hand that we dominate super often here. So it's just like we're effectively gambling.
Yeah. Okay. So the shove here is effectively to us. So we 3-bet to 6.5. So we're only calling what 9 and change to win like 60.
Well, no, we got to call 34.
Oh, never. What? 15 bigs. Wait a minute. Oh, 32 big blinds to shove. Never mind. Oh, now I'm seeing the numbers wrong. I see the 34.26.
Yeah, I saw
the wrong area. Okay.
Yeah, I was too.
Wow.
Sorry, boys.
Oh, no, you're good. You're good.
I was actually 10 is interesting here, but I think Ace King and I think Jacks is more interesting.
Yeah.
So it's like it's a good example to make out of Ace King, in my opinion, because I think a lot of players would just snap in Ace King here, which is why I included this hand. I think that's the most important identification for me is the Ace King offsuit is a pretty easy fold. And then Ace King suited is kind of thin and similar to the Ace 5 off spot a second ago. If it's winning, like, cool, it's not going to be winning a ton, though. And then a hand like 10s is probably pretty clearly a fold. And then Jacks gets really questionable, and Queens is, like, not going to be winning you a house. It's going to win you a modest amount. And then Kings and Aces are obviously a call.
Yeah,
right.
I recently folded Jacks in a spot like sorry to cut you off. I recently folded Jacks in essentially the same spot, except it was for like 20 bigs, and the players I don't even know what the hell they were thinking. One guy had 9s, one had like Ace Queen off, but basically it was a big shove. It was for like 22 bigs, and at the end of the day, like I think it was the right fold. While it wasn't ICM implications, we were not yet in the money. They were not. They were VPIPing like 17% of hands.
Yeah, honest people. Yeah,
like it was just such a weird spot they decided to shove. While it's a Poker Bros massive tournament, it's only like $35 rebuy tournament or whatever. You just have to look at these spots and the aggression, and these HUDs are so important in giving you this information when you're playing these huge tournaments with thousands of people in the field. You can't know like what every player like you get a sample size of like what 10 hands, 20 hands before you're making these massive decisions. So while HUDs are very helpful, I actually agree. I think I'd probably want them banned because it's just such an edge to the players. Direct players get destroyed. If you're playing against the pro players of HUD, you're already gonna get destroyed by them. But if they like,
I mean, I've said on stream recently, like, man, I feel bad that I have this information. Like, I don't deserve this information. I said, like, I've been playing all these tables. I'm talking to the chat, hanging out on stream, and I know this guy's playing 58% of the hands when I haven't watched one hand. Like, it's not even fair, you know.
Yeah. Sorry to get on a ramble a little bit there, but yeah. So what does Hero end up doing here?
He folded.
He folded. Wow. Yeah. Is he a student of yours? Good job. Yeah, pat him on the back.
He's really good. Yeah. Hoping to be working with this guy a long time, actually. Yeah. He's a good one.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, I very much appreciate you bringing up while we've mentioned ICM implications and making these folds that might seem tight but are actually standard to the stream. Very much appreciate.
Yeah, I figured I could offer a little bit of low-hanging value, low-hanging fruit, because most players who are playing tournaments recreationally or for fun but still want to win, they get to final tables and they play way too loose. They play the same style and strategy that got them to the FT, and that's just like pretty far from what should be happening. It's a lot of tightening up and a lot of not, calling all ins like you would in a non-FT setting. And I think that Ace King spot, that 10 spot, is a perfect example of that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, very much appreciate you bringing those spots up.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on the stream. Appreciate it. And head down, graph up, man.
We'd love to see this thing grow up big time. Good luck, you guys.
Thank you. That's the plan, man. All right, take care.
Cheers.
Thank you, Zach.
So we have 2 more hands for you guys, but that was an amazing interview. Very much appreciated his energy, how articulate he was, and you guys should definitely check out his coaching website. We will put a link in the description.
Absolutely.
But let me pull up the 2 hands quick. So which one are we going over first? Yours from 5 months ago?
Yeah, let's do that one.
All right.
That's a really interesting spot.
Is that also the one you sent me this morning, I'm assuming?
Yeah, yes. Yes, it is.
So Ryan 5 months ago was sending these just insane rambly hands that he wanted to sound like he knew what he was talking about, but he just
had no idea
what I was it's the funniest thing in this is you saying like, oh, King 10, like, oh, it's pretty standard to be opening King 10 like under the gun for like in an 8-handed ring game, and I'm just like reading this back and I'm just like, buddy. So yeah, let me pull up this. you could. How do you want to go about doing this hand?
Dude, that's all good. I can kind of give some of the context here. So this is 30-60 cent. This was back in the day, man. This was really early phases of like quarantine and stuff. But yeah, I mean, if you just want to click to the action, I am here. Under the Gun 1, rude, not Under the Gun, not first act. Under the Gun 1 with King 10 of clubs. I said this is a 100% standard open, but I 100% think you should be finding folds in early position with King 10 suited. Entirely dependent upon game dynamic, who is around you. Like, if the person to your left is a super splashy player who loves to 3-bet, and you're like, cool, I'm fine being heads up with you with King 10 suited, that's fabulous. But I think just saying like, oh, King 10 suited is a standard open under the gun 1 is just that's not true.
Yeah, I don't hate it. This game that we have a massive edge on, it's fine. But to say it's standard, absolutely not. If we go into any game that's even mildly competent, I am not opening King 10. Like, no. But anyways, we'll get into the hand a little more. Let's see what happens. All right, so punt it, just flats, and Scotty Stakes puts in a small 3-bet, which you did note, and it is a small 3-bet. So that part of your analysis was correct.
Was correct, that it was a peculiar sizing. But I think one of the things that's interesting is that I kind of like misrepresent his range. Like, he can have a lot of hands here facing what is, I guess, not the strongest under the gun open, a hijack flat. Like, he's incentivized to 3-bet with a pretty decent portion of his range.
But not that small. And you did note how there's no sense in 4-betting him. There's absolutely zero sense in 4-betting him, first of all. Funny you brought that up. Because, yeah, I mean, his stack depth he doesn't have a huge SPR. Right. So it is weird, though, because, like, he's not folding anyone out. It's not like he's trying to isolate you with a 6.3 raise. So obviously, you're just going to put in the flat here. But anything else you want to note before we hit the flop?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think one of those things that it denotes is kind of like perhaps a leaning towards like a medium pocket pair or something like that he's 3-betting to get odds to draw to like a set or a nutted hand or something like that, which is not what you should really be doing with hands like that in position. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's probably the only other note I have.
All right, fair enough. Oh my God, punt it folds. That's just
that's pretty shocking.
All right. So we decide to check. Obviously, Scotty Stake has the pre-flop betting lead, and we expect him to continue him basically almost all the time.
Yeah, I mean, he has a lot of hands that can be betting here. I think at queens through 8s is betting here.
Yeah.
I think any 7 is betting here. I think
Did you know that at the time? I forget what your analysis said.
No.
Yeah, because I remember you saying like, "Oh, this is scary," but like we can't fold to a bet. Okay, no shit, you can't fold to a bet. If you're raising King 10 under the gun 1 and you flop a king, why does the word fold even go through your head? Like, yeah, you could be beat a decent amount of the time here, but like you don't come here to raise King 10 to fold the flop.
I think one of my things in like especially early on in online poker was that like I always just had this mentality like, oh darn it, like they have it or something like that.
Oh, there's an overcard, I'm dead.
Yeah, there's an overcard, I'm dead. Like no. So yeah, absolutely, this is a check call. I don't think I really think you should be there. There's not a lot of value in leading.
Yeah, 9 on the turn. Obviously, we're checking it over.
Got a gut shot, which is fabulous. So
okay, so Scotty Stake decides on the check back. You needed to pick up on this check. What do you think he's checking back? We know Scotty Stakes particularly. If he has, let's say he has an ace high flush draw, even if it's ace deuce of diamonds, I am telling you, he does not check this, without 100%. A doubt in my mind. So when he checks this, you can be confident that right now you have the best hand.
And that was one of the things I didn't give that as a representation. I was like, oh, could he possibly be slow playing a set or something like that? I'm like, no. This player is not capable, or it may be some tiny percentage of the time, but the massive preponderance of the time, they are going to continue with 6s, 7s. There's anything that they had on the flop is
especially when it's a double flush draw. I know a lot of players who will bet flop and then check turn when they do have a very good holding, like a hand like ace king, that just wants to go for value on the river because they figure they can't get 2 streets value. And it looks thinner when it looks like they don't have as good of a hand. But anyways, they do not do this on this board. This player doesn't even, probably might not think at that level. Anyways, so we check. which when we check here, we should be check calling. We talked about
Yeah.
it a little.
Do you think there's any merit to betting?
No. Zero.
None.
Zero.
Okay.
What?
Because I mean,
Why?
the stack is so small that like if we bet and he shoves, you have to call. I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. Why? What does betting accomplish? What worse hand do we think can get us to
That's
call?
true. We're not going to get
maybe. Do we think like an ace nine of clubs or something decides to call? Yeah, maybe. I guess queen 10, queen. But like so many of these hands probably bet turn, whether it be like a gutter, just because like they have the range advantage.
Right.
But when he jams, like I'm snapping this player. Like what is he repping? Is he repping a flush? Why did he not bet turn? While if you had a shitty flush draw, let's say Jack, I don't even know what hand to name that wouldn't like. How does Jack 10 not bet when they've got a flush draw and a gutter? Like I don't know.
Right.
So like I can't really name a hand unless we're saying like ace deuce to ace 5 of diamonds, which I would be surprised if I think it's a pretty good place to check. I mean, I don't know if I would because of the range advantage, but yeah, I get a check there, but I just don't think he's checking here with a flush draw. Just knowing this player, having seen him put in a ton of hands. So you ultimately decide on a fold, which what are you putting him on?
Right. In hindsight, I think what's funny about the analysis is like I think a lot of it was weighted towards him having a better king, but for what reason on earth does a better king check that turn?
I actually think the only hand that makes sense as a value hand is pocket queens. Jack 10 makes some sense, but I actually don't see him raising even a Jack 10 suited. And a Jack 10 suited, how does that not bet turn unless it's specifically the Jack 10 of clubs, which is impossible because we hold the 10 of clubs or hearts.
Ooh,
sorry, hearts too.
Right.
Hearts too.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I just and I actually don't know if with Jack 10 he goes that huge because I think that's stupid because we could have a flush here sometimes and like why does he not go for thinner value? Because he's willing to call off too. It just doesn't make sense. So I truly think he's bluffing here, and on the off chance he remembers this hand, you should shoot it over to him. But
I'm really curious to see if he even remembers.
I'm glad your thought process has greatly evolved.
Right.
And I think that you've also gotten significantly better at calling down with weaker holdings. Obviously, we've seen you be wrong on the podcast against me a ton.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think I showed you the art of the hero call, and I don't think this is that much of a hero call, to be honest.
No,
obviously,
it's not. I think if you're talking about this, it's the best bluff catcher I think that's available because you also have
100%.
Straight having a 10. Yeah, I think it's an absolute call. I agree.
So we have. Yeah, we've got one more hand for you guys. We are going to get the guy who's been sending this in soon. We have a very good guest for you for the people watching right now. I'm going to just spoil. We've got Rampage Poker coming on next week, so that'll be a ton of fun.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, interested. Yeah, from nobody to hero. Anyways, let's pull up this last hand for you guys, and then we'll wrap up. So Hero's got Queen Jack of Spades in the low jack.
Also remember that this is a 5-5-10 game that is a straddler, so the big blinds are halved. So we're really
40. Yeah, sizing's fine. I like it. And we get 2 callers. I don't think there's much to be said other than this is standard.
Yeah. It's gonna be
all right, so small blind checks, under the gun checks. So yeah. We have a backdoor flush draw. We've got an open ender. Interested into how we proceed. 10-9 generally is not great for our pre-flop raising range. But I mean, yeah, of course we can have some 10s and 9s, but opponents have more than us, and we decide to bet 40 into 125. Interesting sizing.
Yeah.
I think it's fine because I think a 9 will tend to not raise you on this flop. And I think a 10 just can't raise you, especially with 3 opponents in the hand.
Yeah.
So I think it disguises our hand a little bit. We expect to be good, obviously, if we hit a king or an 8. Obviously, we aren't always good. 10-9, completely possible.
Yeah.
But I mean, we've got enough backdoor draws, and I totally think we should be betting this flop. I think 40's okay. I like it. I might go. I
like 40 a little better heads up than I like it multi-way.
So what do you go? 45-50?
Yeah, I think I go. I think I go.
I think I go 45 actually, which is interesting because I took a size
we're
bigger
literally
than you
just
do.
picking between it. Yeah,
But I mean, we're nitpicky. We like the bet. We just wish he'd maybe gone a
right.
little bigger. But I mean, it's a pretty dry flop. It's 9-9-10 rainbow. Not the
And I
driest
mean,
flop in the
I
world,
think the
but
thing is that like why I pushed for a little bit larger of a bet is that if one of our opponents does have a 9, it doesn't really affect our outs all that much. Like our kings are still good for
yeah,
us.
but
Like
we get a cheaper price
9.
while still disguising our hand. We still get a
That's
cheaper
true.
price. We're setting our price, so I don't hate it. I think 40's
Okay.
fine actually.
Yeah.
Holy okay. I have not read this hand. We get a raise to 220. Wow. Okay. I think this looks like a lot of 9s. I don't think Ace 10 can do this against 2 opponents.
Yeah.
So
Not
I
with the
think
bet
this looks
call
like a
line.
lot of 9s. I'm interested to if we decide to call. I think we're pretty deep. I actually think a call here is okay, and if we don't pick
Yes.
up any equity on the turn, I fold. So I would call this bet. Obviously, it looks pretty big.
Right.
More than
I agree.
more
I
than
think
5x,
free betting the
but
flop is pretty much suicide.
okay, yeah,
We
we
don't want to be getting
call,
our money in
and
super
he
pro
calls
line.
too, which is good for us. Oh, okay. Turns to 8, and check to us. We bet 500 and 785. I like the sizing.
I like it too because we have to think about what the SPR is going to look like after this. So we bet 500 here. I don't know. It's going to be crazy because we have two callers in this hand.
I don't think going bigger makes sense actually,
No,
because I don't think a flush draw is like calling you. I don't know. I mean, I
right.
can't
I'm
even name
prepared
a
for
flush.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like the sizing. The question is what calls us. I mean, obviously 9 calls us, and I think this is the point in which 10s fold out.
Yeah.
Unless they have a hand like 10 Jack, which just still is a fold.
I mean, maybe do you think that maybe Undergun Straddler is slow or was slow playing an overpair pre-flop?
Small blind's totally gonna fold, and I'm interested to do what the under the gun guy does. Oh wow, what the hell? Small blind, what the hell? Under the gun folds. Okay, I'm an idiot.
Straddler, remember.
The river is a 5, brick, and what the? And they lead for 1150. Holy hell!
Wait,
This is
no.
interesting.
I apologize. I must have misinput that. We bet for 1150.
Oh, that's so different. Check
I
to us.
don't know what happened.
That is so different. I was literally shocked.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, no. It
So
checks
we
to
check.
us.
He bets 1150, and he calls, right?
Right. So
So-
it checks to Hero. Hero bets 11.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So here's where the interesting lesson comes from. And I apologize that we screwed up this hand, but when it checks to Hero, I see he said that he went for the sizing to leave 300 behind because he didn't want him to fold.
Yeah.
And he also noted that afterwards that Villain said after he put in the call,
I wasn't folding anything.
I wasn't folding to an all in. And this is a really interesting point where I think even he would note that he made a mistake here, just not going for the maximum. Because what difference does the $300 make to them? I guess like saying the words all in and like putting that.
Some
little
people
bit
do weird stuff like that. Like in a tournament, though, sometimes I'll put like it'll be like 70% of their stack. They have to call. I've never seen anyone not do it. So it's more prevalent in tournaments. I feel like it's just like a mind game thing. But I've more so just been ripping it. Like I just like. Because it almost looks stronger. Like you're not going to do that with the weak stuff. So like, why not just rip it and further polarize that? So yeah, how do we feel about Jack 9 calling here? Do you think that Jack 9 can profitably call this?
No.
Yeah, but that's the thing. When you call turns, you have to call river.
Right, because it's such a brick. Right, because then and he's not even a full shove, so he's giving you just a little bit better than pot on.
I think this is a fold.
Yeah.
For Jack 9. When the under the gun straddler raises that flop, while we have a 9, he could have a lot of 9s too. So why would we choose this as a bluff candidate when there's just so much strength being shown in this hand? Do you think we're just going to be barreling off with 9-7? Like, what worse hand do we have? We could still have pocket 10s, pocket 8s. Jack Queen is probably like the lower of our value range here.
Right.
Right. Maybe Villain could think we're just spazzing off with aces or kings, but
Yeah, that's interesting. I feel like that's probably what Villain's thought process was that,
because what worst nines do we have? What worst nines do we have? 7-9.
Exactly. We don't have any worse.
That's that raises to 40 pre-flop. That makes no sense.
And
we
they look
still though,
and we're like, we blocked the straight. There's no way they have queen jack. And I think that's why he tossed him the call.
I think this is a bad call.
I agree.
I think we should have gone for all the marbles on the river, but I mean, I like the way you played the hand. I'm assuming you just fold any turn if it doesn't pick up equity. And I like the way you played it. Not much else to say other than jam the river.
Too. Exactly. Yeah. That's the thing is like, this is the opportunity that we get. Like, imagine had that river come some kind of scary card and you're like, dang, I don't get to go for value in this spot. Like, spots like this don't come up all that often, especially in live play. They're only going to come up once every couple of hours or something like that. So I think it's 100% like just a spot where you need to go for the max.
Yeah, I get it's hard to fold 3 of a kind, but man, like, what is he putting us on? Why do we bet turn with a hand like aces or kings when we're raised on the flop?
Yeah.
And then there's 2 callers. Like, I can't name a hand that decides to spaz off here that isn't like 10 jack repping the straight with a blocker and had a pair and just decides to bluff the river when they don't hit. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, other than like 10 jack, I really can't think of a hand that he thought he had beat that would be betting like this, unless he thought we were literally donking off with aces or kings, which would just be so bad. So bad. But yeah, this was definitely an interesting spot. I think opponent played this pretty shitty, but
yeah,
I think also, do we even want to note how Jack 9 off is in the hand when we raise to 40? like from the small blind out of position. I won't even get into that. So but
well, that's what I'm saying is like I think as soon as Villain tables Jack 9 offsuit, given the action in his hand, he's making mental notes. Like, okay, good to know. We'll see you in the future when I'm stacking your chips.
Absolutely. But I think that's enough for today's podcast. This was one of the longer ones, but I think it's a very good one. I think you brought some very good points in. And if any of you guys are on a downswing, head down, graph up. Just put in study time in the lab. Don't get down on yourself. You need a few days off. Take a few days off. Burnout's a real thing. But yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning into this podcast. Rampage Poker next week. Feel free to shoot us any questions you want us to ask. We are very receptive to feedback. Please continue to send us hands.
Like and
subscribe. We are going to rebrand likely and make a page just for our podcast and rebrand a little bit. But eyes out for that.
Sorts of exciting things coming soon. So please subscribe.
We got a guy we pay for all that stuff. So our production quality is getting better. Slow and steady. But anyways, that's it for the night. Thank you guys for tuning in and have a great one.
See you next week.